I used to tell myself it was all in my head, that I was imagining it, that maybe she just needed them more, that I wasn't being fair. But no matter how many times I convinced myself otherwise, the truth always found its way back in. They loved her more. I'm Claire, and this is the story of how I spent my whole life wondering why my parents favored my sister, only to uncover a secret so painful it made me question everything I believed about love, family, and myself. I was the firstborn, 3 years older than my sister Hannah, and for a while things felt normal, at least in the blurry warmth of early childhood. We played together, wore matching dresses, shared a room. But somewhere around the time Hannah turned 6, things started to shift, subtly, quietly, like a temperature drop you don't notice until your fingers are numb. Suddenly I was too loud, too clumsy, too demanding. But Hannah, she was delicate, sensitive. She needed extra care. When we both got sick one winter, I remember Mom stayed up all night with Hannah in her room. She brought her soup, changed her bed sheets, stroked her hair. Me? She left a thermometer and Tylenol on my nightstand. Claire can manage, she told my dad. She's the strong one. It sounded like a compliment. But at 8 years old, it felt like being left out in the cold. Over the years, it only got worse. Every report card of mine was greeted with a quick nod. Good job, Claire. But when Hannah got a B+ in math, Mom cried and hugged her like she'd just cured cancer. She tries so hard, she whispered. I'm so proud of her. I tried hard too, but no one ever cried over me. By high school, it was undeniable. When I got into the honor society, they forgot to come to the ceremony. But when Hannah got a role in the school play, One Line is a Tree, they brought flowers. When I graduated valedictorian, they congratulated me over dinner after a full day at Hannah's tennis match. Still, I kept quiet. I told myself to be understanding. Hannah had anxiety. She needed more support. She was fragile. But inside, I was cracking. College came. I worked 2 jobs to help pay for my tuition. My parents said money was tight. But when Hannah started art school a year later, they paid for her apartment, her classes, her food, even her painting supplies. Art isn't practical, Dad once said to me, but somehow it was worth $40,000 a year for her. And still, I smiled. Still, I visited. Still, I let it go. Until the reading of the will. It was a rainy Tuesday. We were sitting in a lawyer's office, surrounded by boxes of paper and the lingering smell of old coffee. Dad had passed away 2 weeks before. A heart attack, sudden, brutal. And Mom had gone just 6 months earlier, after a long battle with Parkinson's. It was just me and Hannah now. And the will. I didn't expect much. Honestly, I wasn't thinking about inheritance. I was grieving, tired, broken. But what I heard that day shattered whatever remained of my peace. Everything, the house, the money, the lake cabin, the retirement savings. All of it went to Hannah. Not a 50-50 split, not even a keepsake. The lawyer looked at me with sympathy. There's a handwritten note from your father, he said, sliding over a sealed envelope. It might explain things. I remember unfolding it with shaking hands. I thought maybe he would say something kind, tell me he was proud, that there was some reason I couldn't understand. But all it said was, Hannah needs it more. You're the strong one, Claire. You always were. That was the moment something inside me broke. I didn't cry in the lawyer's office, not when I read my father's note, not even when Hannah reached out to touch my arm and whispered, Claire, please. I didn't know. because something deeper than sadness had taken over. A numbness, the kind that only comes from decades of trying, then failing, to be enough. I left without another word, no fight, no argument, just silence. And it followed me all the way home. That night I pulled out an old photo album from the closet, one Mom used to keep under the coffee table. The family album. Page after page, there she was. Hannah, at 5, holding her first violin. At 9, blowing out birthday candles on a 3-tier cake. At 16, in her prom dress with Dad proudly adjusting her corsage. Me? I was there too, just off to the side, in the background, half smiles, cropped corners forgotten. I didn't sleep much that week. I kept thinking, why? Why had I been the one they left behind? Was it because I was harder to love? Too strong? Too quiet? Too independent? Or was it because I reminded them of something they didn't want to remember? I started going through boxes, old ones, the kind you keep taped up for years, thinking you'll throw them away someday, but never do. That's when I found it. A letter, yellowed, faded, torn along the edges. It was addressed to my mother, from someone I had never heard of. Dear Evelyn, I know you made your choice. I've accepted that. But you should know. She's mine too. Claire has my eyes, and if she ever finds out, I hope you'll tell her the truth. I never stopped loving you, but you left. You both did. I'll never forgive you for keeping her from me. Jay. My breath caught. Claire has my eyes. Claire me. I read the letter again, twice, 3 times. Heart pounding. Who was Jay and what did he mean? She's mine too. I searched through more boxes, drawers, closets, anything, until I found another envelope. This one was sealed, but taped to it was a note in my mom's handwriting. Do not open, private. I opened it. Inside were papers, hospital bills, 1 birth certificate, and 2 names. One was mine, the other the crossed out. I sat on the floor holding that envelope, shaking. Something wasn't right, something was off. And suddenly, I wasn't just the forgotten daughter, I was the unexplained one. The next morning I called Hannah. She answered like she'd been waiting. Claire, I'm so sorry about the will. I interrupted. Who's Jay? Silence. I heard her breath catch. You found it, didn't you? She whispered. You found it, didn't you? That's what Hannah said when I asked about the letter. Her voice was barely above a whisper, like she had been rehearsing it in her head for years but still didn't want to say the words out loud. Who's Jake? I asked again, quieter now. Is he my father? The silence on the other end of the line was louder than anything, and then she started to cry. I was never supposed to tell you, she said through tears. Mom made me promise, Dad too. They said it would ruin everything. So you knew? All this time, I said. My voice cracked, not from anger, but from something deeper. The ache of finally touching the truth and realizing it was worse than the lie. Not always, she said. I found out when I was 16. Mom was sick one night and called me into her room. She was crying. She said she needed to tell someone the truth in case anything ever happened. And once I knew, I couldn't unknow it, but I didn't know what to do with it either. The truth came out slowly, like a wound that had been stitched shut too tightly, finally giving way. My mom had been in love with someone else before she married my dad. His name was Jacob, a nurse at the hospital where she volunteered. They had a short, passionate relationship, the kind that happens at the wrong time with the right person. She got pregnant with me, and she never told him. Back then, things were different. Unmarried pregnancies were whispered about in shame. Mom's family pushed her to marry someone suitable, someone stable, someone like Dad. He agreed. She never told him the baby wasn't his until after the wedding. But instead of leaving, he stayed, under one condition: that the truth never got out, that I would be raised as his own, that I would never know who I really came from. Hannah was born 2 years later. Their real daughter, biologically, emotionally, she was the one they planned together, the one who came without secrets. And suddenly everything made sense. Why they held her closer. Why they were softer with her. Why I always felt like a guest in my own home. They weren't punishing you, Hannah said, but they were protecting what they built. You were a reminder of something fragile, something Mom never fully healed from. And Dad? I asked. She paused. He tried, he really did, but you weren't his, not in the way I was, and I think that made it hard for him, hard to forget, hard to forgive. I hung up the phone and just sat there for hours, not moving, not thinking, just letting the truth settle into the cracks of my identity. They lied to me for decades. And I had to wonder, was it out of love or was it guilt or fear? Was I the scar they covered with pretty smiles and polite praise? The one they couldn't look at without remembering the mistake? But more than that, I kept thinking about what Dad wrote in the will. She's the strong one. Was that love? Or was that just another excuse to keep pushing me aside? After a week of silence, I made the decision. I had to know more, not just about the past, but about him, the man my mother had once loved, the man who, according to the letter, had no idea I even existed. His name was Jacob Whitmore. I found a faded newspaper clipping online. He had become a pediatric nurse, worked in Portland, never married, no children. My heart ached reading that. He had spent a lifetime caring for children, never knowing his own daughter was out there. Me. I drove out one morning. I didn't tell Hannah, didn't call ahead, I just showed up. There was a nursing home near the edge of the city, quiet with trees and sun-speckled windows. Jacob had retired years ago, but he still lived there in the assisted wing. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the entrance, trying to steady my breath, trying to figure out what I would even say. But when I walked in, I didn't need a speech, because he saw me. And his expression changed instantly, like some part of him knew. "You look just like someone I used to know," he said softly. His voice was thin but kind, weathered by age but still strong in spirit. "Claire," I said, "my name is Claire. I think you knew my mother. Eleanor." He froze. His hand trembled. And then, tears. Real ones. The kind that don't need words. He reached out to hold my hand. "They told me she moved on, that she left the hospital. I never knew He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. We sat in that room for what felt like hours talking. He told me about the days they had together, how they laughed, how they dreamed of building a life far from pressure and expectation. She was terrified, he said, of disappointing her parents, of losing her place, of being seen as foolish. And I was young, he added with a sad smile. Too young to know how to fight for her. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. Not at Mom, not even at Dad. Just sad. Sad for the version of our lives that never got to exist. Before I left, Jacob reached into a small box beside his recliner. He pulled out a photograph, yellowed at the edges. It was of him and Mom standing outside the hospital. She was laughing, holding a small notebook in her hand. "She wrote in that journal every day," he said. "Said she was writing down everything she wanted her daughter to know. Said maybe one day she'd find her way to the truth." I held the photo to my chest as I walked out. That night I opened Mom's old keepsake box. Buried beneath folded linens and charity gala invitations on water was a notebook. The same one. It started with a single sentence. "To the daughter I couldn't tell the truth to, but never stopped loving." The notebook smelled like lavender and dust. It felt heavy, not from weight, but from everything it had carried for so long. I opened it slowly. "Claire, if you're reading this, it means something has led you here. Maybe pain, maybe anger, maybe love. But whatever it is, I hope you will forgive me." Each page was a window into the woman I never truly knew. Not as a mother, but as a girl. A woman torn between her heart and the life she'd been told to live. She wrote about Jacob, about the nights they would sneak out to talk by the hospital fountain, about how she knew she was pregnant the day she couldn't stop crying at the sound of a lullaby in the maternity ward. "I wanted you so much, Claire. You weren't a mistake. You were the most terrifying, beautiful thing that ever happened to me." She wrote about the fear, the judgment, her parents' disappointment, and how my father, the man I knew as Dad, offered her security but never love. I told him the truth after the wedding. He was furious, but he said something that haunts me still. "I can give her my name, but not my heart." And then, the pages darkened. She wrote about the years after Hannah was born, how different everything became. "They doted on her. I think your father thought of her as his second chance, but you were too much like me. Too curious, too stubborn, too much a reminder of the choices we never made. I tried to balance it, I swear I did. But love given in secret becomes a burden, and I didn't want you to grow up feeling like one. But I did. I always had." There was an entry written 2 days before she passed. "I don't know if I have the strength to tell her, but maybe one day she'll find this. And when she does, I want her to know she was never the mistake. She was the reason I survived." I closed the journal and sat in the dark. The woman I thought I knew was gone, and in her place was someone far more fragile, far more human. And for the first time since she died, I missed her, truly, deeply missed her. Hannah and I met the next day. We sat in silence for a long time before she finally said, "I'm sorry, Claire, for everything. I didn't know how to share them, because I thought I was supposed to protect them, but maybe what I really did was protect the lie." I nodded. "I think we both did," I whispered. We spent hours talking that day, going through old photos, laughing at memories that had once felt like knives. Something shifted in us, not perfect forgiveness, but something close, something like truth. 2 weeks later, we stood together, Hannah and I, in the office of the estate lawyer. She had called me after reading the journal herself. There were no arguments now, no tension in the air. Just two sisters, both worn down by the weight of secrets they never asked to carry. The lawyer cleared his throat, glancing between us. The final clause of the will was intended to remain sealed unless both beneficiaries agreed to open it. We nodded. He unlocked a small box and pulled out a single envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. From Dad. To my daughters, if you're reading this, it means your mother and I are both gone. I never had the courage to say this aloud, but you both deserve the truth. Hannah, you were always the responsible one, the anchor, the one who held us together. Claire, you were the fire, the question mark, the one I didn't know how to love because you reminded me of what your mother and I lost. My breath caught in my throat. He knew, all along. I gave Hannah everything in hopes it would balance what I couldn't give you, but life doesn't work like math. I see that now. There is a second trust, in your name, Claire. It contains the savings from my side work, the land we never sold. It's not as much, but it's a start, a chance. Use it for something that matters, for something real. The lawyer handed me the envelope. Hannah reached for my hand. It's yours, she said. But maybe we can figure this next part out together. Weeks passed. I didn't rush to spend anything. Instead, I went back to the hospital where Mom had worked, walked the halls she once cleaned, watched the nurses and janitors, the single mothers in line with their kids. I saw pieces of her everywhere, and I knew what to do. I used the trust to start a foundation, a quiet one. No fanfare, no plaques with my name. Just help. For women like Mom, women whose stories are silenced, whose truths are buried beneath pressure and perfection. Hannah visits often. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we cry, but we always come back, because now we know what it means to be sisters. One afternoon I sat with Jacob, my biological father, in the garden of his care home. He asked if I was angry. Not anymore, I said. Because truth, I added, isn't always kind, but it is freeing. He smiled, then pulled something from his coat pocket, a folded paper, a drawing of a small girl holding a balloon that said, "Believe." Your mother drew this, he said. She said it was for her daughter, a reminder. Of what? I asked. That even when you don't get to choose the beginning of your story, you do get to choose the end. I was never the favorite, but now I know the truth, and that is enough. Every story has a silence, but the bravest ones choose to speak.